Yes, sir. You're calling the meeting to order.
Let's call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
First item on the agenda, has everyone seen the minutes for August the 12th and for July 29th?
Yes, I
Yes,
read
sir.
Okay. Everybody's seen the minutes?
that. Correct.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes for July 29th?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody's seen the minutes for August the 12th. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for August the 12th. All in favor? A second? We got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah. Okay, warrants have been signed. First appointment is James Shippey.
If you could vote the warrants, that would be a good thing. You can vote them all at once, just.
Okay. Let's make a motion to vote the warrants as signed.
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have an appointment, James Shippey, who is the occupant in 3033 Shelburne Falls Road, that is now in tax title foreclosure by the town of Conway. Mr. Shippey is supposed to be here. Since he is not, he will go on to other business until he gets here. The second item, land sale issues, considering the engineering study on 638 South Deerfield Road. Tom?
Yeah. As you all know, the town now owns 3 pieces of property it was not expecting to own. There's one down on South Deerfield Road, just up from the Boyden's place. And the question is, what needs to be done to that property before it can be put up for sale? There's a slight wrench in the process in that it's unclear what funds the town has to do assessments on land that it has. It's a bit of a falls between the cracks sort of thing. It's really not building maintenance. There may be some other ways to get around it. And I think the question is, what does the select board think that it needs before it can be moved to auction? And that's, I'm just presenting that for your discussion.
Okay, well, what's been presented so far on the property in terms of condition and...
I think Rick can speak to that best.
Yeah, before I do that, I was just curious, so when you say there's no funds necessarily allocated, had you checked in with our accountant?
Yes.
And so she verified that?
I asked what funds might be available for doing an engineering study on the, which, I mean, it could be anything as simple as a perk test that the town could actually do itself, to something much more extensive. And I understand there are problems with the septic on the property to the extent that the actual septic system now is, by informal agreement, located on the property of the downhill neighbor. So there is some question as to whether the site is actually buildable. And I think that's one question. And it may be that the town would want to leave it up to the potential buyer to ascertain that. It may be that the town would want to present something a little bit more clear to potential buyers. I think that's the discussion before the select board. If it was anything more than, say, a simple perk test, I think we might be talking about having to actually allocate funds for whatever that study might be. And I don't know how, I don't know your thinking, still being new, as to how it came to this place, but it's something I think that needs to be discussed and moved on in one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I'll just jump in only because I was sitting there for a while before you showed up. I think this was the first property in recent months that we owned. So Jan came to the board, I think it was last fall, saying that we now own this through tax title. And I think my colleagues remember that we sort of thought, well, this is not a good time to try to sell a piece of property. So we sort of held off to get through the winter. It was sort of early winter, I believe. So then come spring, I think Jan and I were the first ones to say, hey, let's go take a look at that house. So we went down there, and the house is in quite severe distress. Nobody's been living there for a number of years. And at that point, I think we thought, well, let's figure out what the possible value of this property is, just informally as we looked at it. And then we thought, well, I wonder if the septic system is still in order or reasonable. So then we contacted the Board of Health to see what information they had on the latest Title V. And that was the point where we found out from the neighbor, Howard Boyd, who came to one of our meetings, that in fact the original owner, who has passed away, had put in a septic field, which unfortunately was on the property of the neighbor, Howard Boyd. And at the time, Howard just sort of let go, saying, well, it's okay, but of course now if we try to sell it, it's a little problematic since it's on Howard's. And I think Howard also mentioned that they were in the house years ago, and it was so toxic and mold that they got out of there right away. So I guess I give that only from the standpoint of our hope initially was that, hey, we've got a property that we can sell and get some money for the town, but the property and the house and septic system don't look like a very good deal in Beyond 116. So I guess at this point, part of me feels like, do we really, as a town, want to put money into whether it's an engineer, I don't even know what we're talking about with the engineering side, appraisal or whatever, or do we just want to put it on the auction block and see who comes forward?
As is.
As is. And I think our treasurer was mentioning that, when you sell as is, they put down the cash and it's theirs, and they can figure out whether a septic can go in there, whether the house needs this or whatever.
I think we need to have an idea of what this is worth, and I think we need to have an appraisal of the property.
Well, as something was said before, and for me it wasn't in jest, that because we are responsible for that piece of property, it was suggested that maybe we could let the fire department have it as an exercise and burn it, because it's not really worth anything, can't be used, and it would apparently get rid of that mold problem that's in there, which is very, very bad from all I've heard. That it'd be a better piece of property without the house.
Mm-hmm.
From an appraisal standpoint, I know a little bit about appraisals, and the little I know, they will not be able to tell you if it's a buildable spot or not. An engineer needs to tell you that. They give you two prices. One is yes, you can build, and one is no, you can't. So I don't think an appraiser is going to help us much at this point. Seems two options to me: either sell it as is, or else determine if it's buildable and what its real value is.
Okay, so the first step is to determine whether it's buildable. So then we need an engineer's report on that. Okay, then let's do that first.
Okay, so the funding for that, Joyce said we didn't have any at this point.
We'll have to take it out of the reserve fund.
I wondered if maybe we could use tax title. It's grazing. I do have some tax title money.
What would an engineering study cost? Do we have a ballpark guess?
Yeah. Anybody know a ballpark on that? How about since nobody's living there, we've had it for more than a year, there's no huge rush, because the idea hopefully would be the 3 properties, once we figure out where we're going, maybe we get to do the whole auction together. I think that would be helpful. So since there's no rush, how about if we have Tom kind of research a little bit more about what an engineering quote study would cost, what it would entail, and then we can figure out how to dig up the money for that.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any experience with that, Dave?
sorry, I came in very late in the conversation. I don't know what you're talking
An
about.
engineering study for a piece of property to see if it's buildable or
You
not.
gotta just-
And how much it might
The
cost.
structure?
Yeah, how much it might cost. Well, it's basically the property. The structure is worthless, basically.
Which property are we talking about?
Down on
We're talking about
South Deerfield Road.
Stenbach property. It's right up from Howard Boyd's Sugar Shack. The town owns it through tax
So the
title.
question is whether it is rehab able.
Yep.
And I would think a couple of thousand probably, but I'm not very qualified in that, so.
Okay.
That's
I just wondered if you
Yeah,
had
that's a
any
guess.
experience with it.
So,
All right, so we'll have Tom do some more research on that.
Great.
Okay, we have, we're waiting.
Did Mr. Shippey ever,
7:30.
is he in the hall or anything?
No, he's not.
Okay.
We have a letter to Dave Barton, thanking him for his service to the town. I'm going to make a motion that the board sign this letter today. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Actually, when I think of Dave Barton, his service to the town, he's right up there as far as the number of things he's done and different committees. Reminds me of the former Board of Health chair, who also, again,
Had done so much.
No, we didn't have a really good town administrator then, so I think we dropped the ball. But again,
No comparison here.
it is, no, but it is a comparison from the standpoint of all the wonderful people that do so many things.
And
for the town.
how well it was done.
Thank you.
And and Dave too. He has special gifts and skills that have made him especially qualified for what he's been doing for the town.
Wonderful
If you're
man.
lucky to have him on the phone for us now.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is employee banked hours. Has everybody seen these hours?
Yeah.
Okay. What we'll do, what we should do on the next town meeting, whether it's a special town meeting or annual town meeting, we'll put an article up to fund these. Right now, these are unfunded. We will fund them, and between now and then, we'll figure out exactly what options the employees will have in terms of a payout of these hours. So at this point, I'll make a motion that at the next, we put a warrant together for the next special town meeting or annual town meeting, whichever comes first, to fund these banked hours for employees. I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Just as a little explanation, just because people are watching and just for information for folks, the good news for Conway is now Jan Warner, who serves as our treasurer and desk collector and also our payroll clerk, now tracks and oversees the vacation and sick hours of all our employees. Prior to that, we sort of let them accumulate beyond what we probably should have. So the good news is presently we're kind of doing that. We have a new personnel manual that kind of oversees that, and so that liability of these accounts will not get so great. So once we take care of these folks who have get them to the point where we really need to get those taken care of and off our books for liability, then we'll be in much better shape. So,
Next item on the agenda, we received the agreement from Town Council on the United Congregational Church grant funding from the Germain Trust. And I'll make a motion that we sign 2 copies of this, and then we'll contact the UCC to come in and sign it as well.
Second.
All right.
so your motion was seconded by Jim. So I'll say we're all in favor.
Put the record in.
All right, next item we have the special conditions for interoperability grants. Now, this has to do with,
Yeah, that's a Town of Conway 2012 Emergency Management Planning Grant.
all right,
So most of the paperwork's been done. This is 2 additional signatures needed by Chairman of the Board, who's our official signatory for these grants. And this is because one of the projects we're hoping to use these funds for is going to be an antenna at the school, because that's our emergency operations center and also our town shelter. So in the past uses of that building, we've discovered that our radio connection with MEMA in Agawam is not the best, so this will help alleviate that. So when you do anything to do with radios or antennas or whatever, you have to do additional paperwork, which this is.
It's a mouthful of words.
It's a lot of paperwork, and
But how do you say that thing? And he did it so well.
yeah, okay.
interoperability.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
All
word.
right.
So, Rick, did you mean for this to be on the select board agenda, or just could John just sign this?
Either way, you could have just signed.
I think it just requires your signature.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, as long as we've done this, let's make a motion. I'll make a motion that I sign both of these. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Actually, I love these silences. It gives me an opportunity to mention that as emergency management director in Conway, not only do we have a wonderful committee that helps out with our shelter, which is also at the school, grammar school, but we also have some volunteers who help with the operation of the Emergency Operations Center. And it's interesting that in the audience tonight, there's 2 of them. Dave Chichester, who is the assistant or deputy EMD, and also the chair of the planning board is on our EOC crew. So it takes a village to run an EOC. And no hurricanes so far. That's another good thing.
It worked out so far.
Well, I hope we never get another one like Irene.
Yep, me too.
It's going to be worse if we do. The rivers are blocked with an awful lot of debris and trees and stuff.
Tom has given me his job description, and I'm going to take some time to look this over the next couple of days. Everybody's seen the MMA fall legislative breakfast meeting notice.
I'm looking forward to them.
Oh, we could go to one in Florida.
Miami Beach?
Miami.
Yes. Oh, the one way up there.
Way at the top of the world.
Florida, Massachusetts.
Went through there in May once, quite a number of years ago, with 4 inches of snow on the ground.
I'm sorry, which meeting was that you made the announcement for?
This is the MMA's, the Massachusetts Municipal Association Fall Legislative Breakfast Meetings.
Thank you.
Is it 7:30 meetings?
Well, we can,
Okay,
she's here, so go ahead.
You're on?
you're on, Diane.
Okay.
Dave.
Buy that. Thanks.
My apologies first to Rick, because I can briefly talk about this with you, and I think that I know I missed some of the moving parts, and I think we went through it too fast. So I wanted to get a full kind of view on this. This is, the topic of this is the Rose property / senior housing / safety complex. To bring everyone up to date, there have been wetland delineations done, both for the Rose property and up New Brookville. Wetlands by Orchard Equipment, all of that.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And when we had our big meeting last year, the two main contestants for the Rose property was the safety complex, and they have first dibs because it's the only logical other place that anyone could think of because due to being the center of town. And senior housing. That was what everyone got coalesced around. Now, how we left it was that before there's lots of reasons why the Rose property is not ideal for the safety complex. I mean, any number of reasons. However, it possibly could work down there. But before we came to that kind of drastic proposal, we wanted to make sure that it does not fit, or that we'd like to see if it can fit where it is, if you turn the building around and you play with the dimensions. And to make that kind of judgment or analysis requires a formal site review, because otherwise it's just opinion. Because there are issues. There's the back wall needs attention going onto the river. There's the septic problem. There's the well problem too. However, they've been working there successfully for a long time. So it's a real possibility, at least in a lot of people's minds. So now moving forward, we can't. The senior housing people, Pixie and her gang, which has now been beefed up to really, there's a rather dynamic committee that she's got working on it, and they have at last town meeting, as you recollect, they got a few grand to do a site review and some planning. Now they have Peter Wells from Northampton, and he's been down there and talked with them, and we moved beyond the question of can you put housing down there. The answer is yes. And so he is now working on a full site analysis with aerial drawings of how I think it's 8 units might situate down in the upper.
Closer to the road.
Closer to the road, but closer to this end.
Yeah, this end, yeah.
But not on the road. It would be settled down into the property. So it'd be kind of... Anyways, so they're working on that. That will be finished, actually, probably late September and October. And so right now, what this is not going to be involved town financing. This is private financing of whatever kind. And right now, that's what they're working on. They have some angle on one little trickle of state funding possibly, and then there's Donna Crabtree, who has a lot of connections, is working on something, and Jack Lockhead and John Gates have weighed in too with some interesting private-public kind of deal. So I mean, there's some people working on the financing. So it's a tricky thing, arguably, but they're working on it. So now it comes to but if they come up with a viable proposal, they'd like to move forward, and we'd like to vote to make a proposal that the Rose property be henceforth dedicated to senior housing. Can't do that unless we know that the safety complex cannot be where it is. So that was the full story of the reasoning why. So we were thinking of whenever you have, and we'd like to move forward in as timely manner as possible. So whenever if there's going to be any possibility of a special town meeting in the next X months, we'd like to tack on a request for an article requesting site review financing. If not, we can wait. We can wait until May, and then we'll just do it through the regular process. But it would be probably move things along faster if we could get this done. This doesn't mean that you guys have to act on doing anything about it. It just means we have the ducks in a row now, and we can move forward. And there's a settled plan for at least these two big projects, and then we can move on to something else. So that's like more the full story. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple things.
Okay.
The planning board has looked at other possibilities, and particularly the French area, Burkeville, but have not been able to come up with anything that passes the conservation regs, really, and the wetland regs. So those options that we had hoped might be available in the beginning have kind of faded away. The other thing is that we're not really pushing the safety complex right now, but we take our job on the planning board as looking for the long view, looking 5, 7, 8 years out. And we're concerned that if the housing thing chugs along and it gets committed, that another option for the safety complex, maybe 5, 7 years down the road, might be taken away. So all we're trying to do is set the scene as best we can to see what the options are, and we do think that having a site review of the present highway garage plot and all of the challenges and opportunities there is something that ought to be done now so that we know, can we look toward that or not? And then the other question is, are you folks aware of any other opportunities in the central downtown that might come up? And
Aside from the ball field.
Aside from the ball, or we're still looking for those options as well.
I spoke to somebody about a possibility, but I've got to go back and talk to him some more. That I think is a better step.
Now you're talking about the piece of property that's right next to Owesco?
No,
That we ruled out because of conservation wetland issues.
we had.
Okay, we can't.
No, we've had Russ in. Russ has talked with us on 2 different occasions too, and we've had wetlands delineation done there.
Oh, what's her name? I'm blocking on her name.
Stockman, Emily Stockman.
Emily Stockman, right?
Emily Stockman.
Yeah.
She came in to do the delineation for the Rose property, and then spent 2 hours with us, kind of pro bono, working on. And we sat and we tried to figure this and that, and it's a no-go. Just the way the wetlands are.
We can't recreate those anywhere else.
Can't do it. Like, we went
Because if that property was usable, it would be an excellent property for.
It would so be an excellent property. But we worked every single angle that we could think of, and then it was not working. So, as I said, it was really almost 2 hours we spent trying to think of everything. So Russ was there, Norm was there too, and but it was. And what she came up with, she said, in the regs on that particular property, the way the wetlands are, the way everything is, it's a completely black letter law thing. It's rigid. There's some things there's wiggle room. She said there's no wiggle room up there.
It's a humanly created wetland.
And she said basically tough noogies.
Yeah, and since it is a wasteland,
Yeah.
and it is a historic site, if we make it one, why not go ahead and make it a historic site instead of letting it sit there as a wasteland?
That's a possibility.
I think it makes sense.
But you still can't build a safety complex on it. Yeah.
No, but you could reopen the canal and make it a historic site. I don't see why you couldn't.
Well,
That may be doable. It doesn't answer the safety
You're the
complex
fiscal
issue.
conservative. What are you talking about spending more money?
that's
What?
another.
No, I don't want to. No, if you volunteer to go down there with some shovels.
Another.
Oh, okay, all
Records.
right, that's not bad.
And so we really did look into that. There's not we did no stone unturned. So there we are.
Okay. Now you're saying the present site can be reused?
Well, that's what we want to determine.
I don't know.
That's,
Because you got the river running right behind it.
that's what we want to determine. Whether in any, because there is thought, there is opinion that if you turn the fire department around, it's going to need less space because the highway people aren't going to be there. If you turn it around, it would make access easier for the longer fire trucks. And if an engineering review could come back saying, yes, there's a way to repair the retaining wall, I mean, that's the reason for that we're asking to put an article on the warrant.
It's a feasibility study.
It's just a
Yeah,
feasibility
yeah,
study,
yeah.
yeah. That's all it is.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there'll be issues that come up that'll require a special town meeting
Okay.
sometime in the fall.
Okay, so then we can get slotted in on that.
Absolutely.
And maybe in the meantime, we can get a better handle on the price.
Exactly
And
my
get
point, yeah.
perhaps a proposal
There
from
you go.
someone to...
You just bought yourself a project.
Volunteerism at its best.
Yeah.
Bring it around, yeah.
Well, I applaud your thinking about 5 to 7 years ahead because, I think a year or so ago, I remember a lot of people discussing the fact that, Conway's a great city, town, and all that stuff, but when are we going to get some long-range planning in here? So again, I think this board and your board, I think, are on the same page from the standpoint of we've got our highway garage ahead of us, which will be a bonding issue and a finance issue. But again, if we can look toward the next 5 to 10 to 15 years for our infrastructure needs, whether it be rehabbing that building, the possibility of dealing with the offices between these two buildings, I
That's
think.
what I was going to say. You haven't forgotten about town office, right?
No.
No, there's that
That's
too.
kind of next
Yeah,
on the list.
yeah. When we think of what we spend our tax dollars on, it's paying for our schools and it's paying for our town employees. So from the standpoint of structures and the town business, I think those are two big areas we have to focus on.
FYI, we have finished the third and final pretty much draft of the new zoning laws for zoning laws for downtown. With the grant we got from FERCog, and we're going to be holding a public hearing with them with Peggy Sloan there on the 20th of September. Yeah, so and that's going to be a hard sell when we get to that.
I think it's the 19th.
The 19th, it's the 19th, that's right, not the 19th, yeah, the 19th.
Thursday.
Yes.
Thursday the 19th at 7 o'clock.
Multi-purpose.
You'll get notices and all, but
So if it's available, do you check the availability of the planning, of the town hall?
Multi-purpose room?
Yeah.
we'll be fine, yeah.
Very cool. Excellent, good work.
Okay,
Anything else, you
I
guys?
think.
That's great.
Okay,
Thank you for coming in. Next thing,
Thank you.
Dave, thank you.
Thanks.
Jim?
Heck of a job.
Go ahead.
That's deep hole into the deep hole into Okay, are you going to say it?
We wanted the town hall general purpose room for the 20th or the 19th?
It's the 19th, I know. Okay,
We've all seen this notice from the Hampshire County Select Boards Association about the meeting on the 12th of September that we can't go to because we've got the meeting at Frontier. So,
And you're going to talk to them about changing their schedule.
Yes.
Board of Assessors is somewhere.
Probably in their office.
Yeah.
it's-
Tom, you have this in here for next meeting?
Yes. Yeah, those are not the items for tonight.
Okay.
Sorry, I will have that better organized next week.
Okay. Do we have the delinquency accounts for the ambulance service?
He sent those out to us.
Yeah, I gave
Look at.
in email, and I have one hard copy here anyway.
think Jody
Was Jody gonna be
Yeah,
in?
she's going to be here.
She's right
She's right
outside
here.
the door.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So you-
Yeah. Yeah, I sent
Jody,
you
come on
the
in.
first page.
Hey, Jody.
Jody, how you doing? Yeah,
Fine, how are you?
thanks for coming in, Jody.
Oh, not a problem. I'm gonna try and get some of this resolved. All right, you have a copy?
Yes. You've seen these two?
Yes.
Okay. I spoke to Coastal Billing this afternoon about all of them. Mr. Buzzle has free care. Technically, we can't bill him.
He has,
Free care from the state of Massachusetts.
okay.
So,
So we can't bill him for the ambulance ride.
nope.
Can we bill the state for the ambulance ride?
Yeah, I wish.
Is he still in town?
As far as I know, he's moved out of town.
I was thinking that.
They could move.
All
Did
right,
you
so
say that you've spoken with the people?
Coastal Billing.
Oh, Coastal
That's who
Billing.
takes care of all of our billing.
Coastal Billing.
all right, so there's no chance of recovering anything from him? Okay, how about Francis?
Francis
Cardinal?
Cardinal. Progressive paid the patient directly.
How did that happen?
It's a motorcycle. So her motorcycle insurance, there is no personal injury. So her health care had to cover it directly. And from what I was told, she submitted the bill to Progressive. Progressive paid her, which means she should have paid us.
Okay.
This is one that, I'm sorry, I'd like to go after.
I can't say I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Since it has been paid, it's been paid to her and
To pay to her,
certainly.
she should have paid us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this was an ALS call, and I had to pay Bay State Health $350 already, so they've been paid.
Okay.
We're waiting for our money, and I don't quite know how to go about going after her, but I think this is one the town needs to pursue.
Absolutely.
If she's been paid,
I agree.
then we need to be paid.
Absolutely, sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Philip Desbin. The man has no insurance and has replied to none of Coastal's inquiries. So he has no intention of paying.
And how much is that for again?
His is for
$662.
$662.15.
Okay.
Now, he's a resident of Turner's Falls.
Yes.
Okay. How did we get involved with?
He was probably in town. It probably was a motor vehicle accident.
It's hard to get water out of the stone, so
If he has no insurance, we're probably not going to get
Nope.
anything out of him.
makes sense right now.
Heidi Flanders, the payment plan has been set up.
Okay.
So that one is taken care of.
Okay.
Landu, John, they can't find it. The address that he gave us, or we had on him, was West Springfield. It's the replies that Coastal is getting. It's, oh, that's not me. I have no way to verify that one way or the other. And his bill was for $215.64. His insurance paid part of it, and this was his portion left to pay.
Right, so
Okay, and you don't think
We
we'll be able
can't
to
find
track
him.
down? Okay. Good.
Okay, Mr. Ramos is the last one. And when we transported Mr. Ramos, I knew we weren't going to get paid right for this one. Speaks no English. I can't even guarantee you that's the social security number.
Was he
is
in an
accurate.
accident here?
No, we cover for Hilltown, or when they are in Highland, when the Cummington Fair is ongoing. This gentleman was involved in the drowning last year. He was in the boat where the gentleman drowned at the DAR Forest. It was one of his friends. And we were called in to transport this gentleman, and he spoke no English. I couldn't even get an address, social security number for the longest time. I finally got it because Cooley Dickinson finally acquired the information.
Jody, if I may offer, I sometimes may be an assistance to find people for you through our deputy tax collector. They have access to the register of motor vehicles.
Because Mr. Ramos isn't paying anything.
Are you like our NSA?
You can help, you should come see me, I can help you find people.
Okay. Well then, why don't we see if we can find Mr. Leather. He only owes $215.64. But it'd be nice if he paid the remainder of the bill.
Okay. Up front, when we transport someone, we're doing everything we possibly can to get
Yes.
our records in order.
Yes, we get their name, address,
Mhm.
their social security number, and any information that we can get on their health insurance. And then we also get a copy of the hospital's admit sheet,
Right. Okay.
which has a lot of the same information on it, and we send all of that to our billing agency so that they can try to track down those people.
How have we been doing lately on our billing?
Most people are paying.
Okay. What percentage does this represent of our bills?
This is the last, let's see, Mr. Ramos is the last one, so these are the delinquent bills that are at least a year old.
Okay.
I have some more upstairs that are more current, and again, some of them are motorcycle accidents, where the people think that their health insurance is going to cover it. A lot of health insurances won't cover motorcycles. They think their motorcycle insurance is going to cover it. They don't. You fall on a motorcycle,
You're alone.
you're pretty much alone.
Be careful, David.
Thank you.
I always see you being careful. It's
Well,
Okay.
You know
Like this
exactly
past
what I mean.
weekend, huh?
There is no bodily injury on a motorcycle claim. There is none. It is if you have limited health insurance, they may not cover any of it.
Costs too much.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's your recommendation that we write off the 4371.90.
Nope.
Another one's
$1,029.97
Yep.
from Francis Cardinal. I think the town should pursue to collect.
Okay.
And the 512 from Heidi Flanders is going to be paid.
Okay.
They're on a payment plan. I think we should try and find John Ledoux. If she can help us find him so that he is sent the correct bill. Victor Ramos, the $828.75 from him, we're not going to get.
Okay.
The Ronald Buzzle, he gets free care. We're going to get nothing from him.
Okay. So we'll write off the rest of those.
Yep, no problem.
And I don't know how we proceed with Francis, though. Are we going to have to take it to small claims court and get the town lawyer involved?
And the amount of money, there?
$1,029.97.
Do you know the limit on small claims?
No,
I think it's a couple of $1,000.
but if she's been paid, or he's been paid, he should have paid his bill.
Francis Cardinal.
Cardinal Francis.
So how does it
He's
work?
the guy that
Whose
became Pope, isn't
responsibility
he?
is it to follow in small claims court? Is it the department's?
I'm not sure.
You mean for the town? It would be our town council.
Yeah, it would be our town council.
File.
Does anything
For
like
us.
that. So is it worth our town council's rate to go after this? I don't know.
You know what?
Why
I'll-
do we
I'll-
have
can
counsel
go-
for small claims?
Can't you go to a
Yeah, we
probate
do.
court or something? You don't need a lawyer. You go and sign a piece of paper and you appear.
Anyone can
Tom.
file a small claim.
Yeah, small
Tom, why
claims.
don't you research that and
Yeah.
coordinate with Jody? Okay.
Right?
Have you met Tom?
Yep.
Okay. I'll see.
And that was the end of mine. I'll probably get more for you in another 6 months.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Jody.
coming in, Jody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Good work, Jody.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, we have an interim appointment to the Board of Health, Ann Gibson, Do we have any paperwork on that, Tom?
I don't have anything to sign right now. If you
Okay.
vote it,
Yeah.
I'll have something
All right.
for you to.
And I'll make a
sign.
motion that we appoint Ann Gibson as an interim appointment to the Board of Health. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And will be a great contributor to the Board of Health.
Yeah, I think
Great
so.
background.
Tom, do we have any other mail?
No, nothing other than
Okay.
what you've already read out is part of the announcement.
Okay. Do you have an update?
Yes, I do. I'll try not to take too much time with it. This is just to let you know how I've been settling in. And
Now, at the next meeting, we're going to have
Myself.
an open house for you. The
yes,
next meeting. Okay.
yes, indeed. Let me just make a quick one, and I will join you right away. I have been meeting with a lot of people in town and getting to know all the department heads, especially. Chief Lumet, of course, and Fire Chief Bob Baker. Jody, I had a long talk with, and had quite an extensive orientation to the town and its roads by Ron Sweet, which we were not able to complete in the time allotted. So
It's a long way.
and it's a lot of roads and a lot of really, really beautiful land, and I feel very lucky to be here. And, I appreciate this town that you all love. I will be meeting with David Bodette tomorrow night to go over the ball field project. And I thought that I would offer to meet anyone who wanted to come in and meet with me before the next select board meeting.
Sure.
Between 6 and 7 on September 9th. Between 6 and 7, Monday, September 9th. I'll be here for anyone who wants to come and chat and meet
That's
me.
2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
And will there be like a full buffet or anything, like any refreshments, Tom? Or have you
You know, I
thought far ahead?
appreciate town volunteers, Rick.
Oh,
And
all right.
I'm really, really glad.
You know
that
what?
since this is on your mind.
You know, I'm thinking about checking in with Dave Chichester. So we'll talk about this before we
Maybe
make
some
an
tea
official announcement.
and biscuits.
Tea and crumpets.
Yeah.
What's a crumpet?
We did receive notice from Bernardston that as the lead town in the community development block grant process, they will be submitting a request for funds. And that's good news. I have all of that information if anyone wants to see it. The representative to the Franklin Regional Council of Governments is open, and I just got today a notice that the appointment for the Franklin Regional Planning Board also needs to be made as well, and I'll be contacting Joe Stragowski to see if he wants to continue in that position. About the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, I do believe that a select board member should, if possible, hold that seat. Otherwise, the COG, I think, suffers from a lack of executive decision makers present. However, I would be willing to fill that seat if the select board thought that was necessary.
Can I jump in there just for a second to discuss that? So having, I think the last council meeting for the FERCOG was about a month ago, and when I got that, as I was sitting at that desk, I realized that we had no representative. I think in the few months back, or a year back, or whatever, Tom Spiro was our council representative. I don't think he attended that many meetings. So I did attend. It was very informative. As I told Tom earlier, most of the 23 towns were represented, not all of them, but it was a smattering of some select board members representing towns. I think there might have been 1 or 2 town administrators, and there were other volunteers. It didn't have to be whatever. But I thought it was very informative. I thought it was great. So
what I'd like to do is put that on the agenda for the next meeting
Great.
for
Yeah, great.
further discussion.
all right.
I'd also like to discuss a contract in the not-too-distant future. There's a little bit more on that here. Familiarizing myself with the boards and committees in town, and I will relay any news from them to you as necessary, and I think maybe bring them in if there's anything substantial happening, so that not only the board can be informed, but the people of the town as well through FCAT. Thank you. About the highway garage, the chair of that committee, Chief Ouimet, is planning on calling a meeting in the next couple of weeks. I understand there is a preliminary estimate of just over $2 million for the garage. This will necessitate hiring an owner's project manager, as it is a project over $1.5 million. So that will be the next major step to take. The owner's project manager will be responsible for both the design and construction phases and will act as a clerk of the works for the town. I'm planning to be at Housing Court Friday morning with Jan for the eviction hearing. I don't know how long it will take, but I may not make it back to the town offices on Friday.
What time is that on Friday night?
Did we?
We don't have a confirmation from our attorney yet.
Okay.
I believe it's at 9, but we'll confirm.
I should also have the check for the recording of the notice of intent for the ball field by then, so I can bring that over to the registry of deeds at the same time. There is an application to the Guilford Fund in your folders for the next meeting. And finally, we've had an issue with a tree coming down from the edge of a road onto private property. The owner believes it is the town's responsibility to remove the tree. The highway superintendent disagrees. I will be meeting with the superintendent and the tree warden to come up with a policy that we can present to the board about that kind of issue, perhaps at the next meeting. But in case you hear from any irate citizens that the highway department isn't cleaning up town trees, we will hope to have more information at the next meeting for you on that. That's fine.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we have any concerns? Rick?
No, I'm very happy, thank you.
I like
The brevity?
the brevity as well as the shorter hair. It's obvious that your West Point experience is coming back to you.
Thank you, sir.
You know, wow, I like it.
Yes, sir. Good.
You know, you got to look good with the 2 Marines on the board.
Understood. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I have just a question. This keeps coming up about the ball field, the recreation field. What does that mean? Whatever you said, however you said that. What does that mean? That there's going to be something. What does that entail?
The town last year applied for a grant under the Mass Works program of the state, and it was a very large grant. And the understanding of the town is that it was not able to be funded because not all of the permitting was in place. The particular permitting that they were looking for was a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission, so that the Conservation Commission is formally notified of the plan to do something within an area over which they have jurisdiction.
Right.
So we are now in a position to finally record that notice of intent, which has been signed off by the Conservation Commission, and get them the formal notice of its being recorded back to them, and that will solve, as I believe, the only major stumbling block to the project being funded. Now, there will be obviously a different pool of applicants this year. We don't know how competitive it will be. It is a very large grant, but we do believe that we have everything in place, or will have by the end of this week, with any luck, everything in place to file that grant application in a timely way. It's due in just a couple of weeks, so that we will now have, we think, an even better shot of receiving that grant.
Personally, I'm a roadblock to that project. I absolutely cannot approve such a thing. I went to the meeting where they presented the engineering whatever for the project. I have been totally behind doing the swimming pool. It's going to take about $10,000 a year maintenance. The town's got to pay that. Once they do that project in the field, I don't know how much it's going to take to maintain it, but it is going to take money to maintain it that the town will have to come up with. I think, personally, opening that drainage ditch that used to be open all the time, and the guy, the engineer, admitted that this will not solve the problem, and some of it is counterproductive. If professional athletes can postpone a game because of the weather, I think the children in Conway can postpone a game because of the weather. God help us that we are so spoiled that we have to have everything when we want it right now, no matter how much it costs. We don't know what that maintenance cost will be every year, but it is such a massive project that I have a feeling it's not going to be cheap. And the swimming pool, $10,000 a year, I think it's as much as I'd be willing to commit to.
Can you tell me the history of how this project has moved forward? And the
I can't
support that
tell
it
you all
has-
the history, except
it's
somebody
gotten to
came
this
up with
point.
the idea of redoing it because it rains sometimes when we have the Festival of the Hills. It rains sometimes when we have events. The festival, we don't have much wiggle room. So we've dealt with the rain. If at the stretch where the food booths are, which is off the hill,
Excuse me. Rather than getting into the details of the project itself, could you just let me know whether this has gone by town meeting or this select board in terms of approval?
it's been discussed. But then every time I say, well, how much is just this looking at it going to cost? I don't really get a good answer, and it seems to just go ahead anyway. And I personally, when we have a town meeting to deal with this, I will express my objections. I just think that we are putting ourselves in a position to spend more money than we know, and we don't really know what the future holds. I just can't see that being practical.
We're talking about the article that was passed at town meeting. Was it last
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Yeah. For the $90,000 for engineering and permitting of this
Project.
this improvements to the ball field, and the idea was that they would be able to get a grant from the state to get this project done. And from what I understand, last time around they were very close to having that grant given to them. This time around it may be granted, so it could be $1 million grant that would pay for virtually everything that will be
It's not
done.
going to pay for the maintenance.
Can I ask
And
a question
grants
of
and
where-
free cash come from somebody. And as somebody said, well, if we don't take the money, somebody else will. I don't want to be the one who says, oh yeah, let's take that money.
Jim, I just want to jump in because
Yes, please do.
So with the
Talked about.
Oh, that's right. But with your comments about the pool, I know we got the pool project, then we got the town ball field. But when you said it, actually you said at the senior meeting too, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but as far as the pool project, that even though we voted as trustees for the handicap accessibility, which was town trust fund, as far as all the other costs for the pool, it's nothing to do with the town. It's not owned by the town. So as far as maintenance costs, those will all be covered by the pool, the citizens who contribute to that. And then as far as the cost for maintenance in our packet, which I think you got the packet. Did we get, Jim, the packet from our...
I haven't read it yet.
In there's a page, and their estimate, I think, were you just looking at that packet maybe? The estimate from the pool committee is that the maintenance costs, which they will pay for from their organization, not from town funds, will be 1,000 to 3,000. So when you said 10 to 12, I was going to say something, but of course I didn't want to in that crowd.
Well, I heard that figure thrown out.
Yeah, so I don't know who threw that out, but again, all I can say is in their presentation, discussion 1 to 3. And having been on the Board of Health, I remember when Dave and I were on the Board of Health, and back then, years ago, they didn't even have to do... remember, we were the ones that jumped on with Sue Bridge saying, you've got to do testing of the water. They hadn't done that. So as far as their maintenance costs, quote, in the old days, pretty minimal. And now they've got to do, through the Board of Health, mandate, and just making sure that everything stays good. They're talking 1,000 to 3,000 per year, which I think in their fundraising, they've got a chunk allocated for that to go. So again, that's my only...
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm glad it's not that much, and I may have misheard.
Yeah.
Is there a suggestion that the maintenance for the pool might be comparable to the maintenance for the ball field? Because the maintenance for the ball field is a public project, it's a town project.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the pool isn't.
No.
Yeah.
So your point is taken.
You clarified it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
have a further question.
Okay, there is one more item. We have a request from the pool committee for the first disbursement from the Germain Trust for accessibility improvements. There was a meeting on site last Tuesday night. Rick and I were there. We saw the progress.
I went down to look.
Yeah, we saw the progress that we're making, and we got a little more insight into the accessibility part of these improvements. And since that, I have talked to Craig about the accessibility improvements and how they work for the whole project. And their first invoice is for $16,687 to be taken from the trust. I would like to make a motion that we pay this first invoice to the Conway Community Swimming Pool, Inc. for the first Stage 2 accessibility improvements. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a minor correction on that. I believe that invoice is directly to Davenport, not to Conway Swimming Pool.
Correct.
It's for Conway Swimming Pool to Davenport.
I had a long talk with Charlie while I was down there, and he explained some of that to me.
Okay, so we have...
It's a complicated thing, but as I said, even before that, there are things that have to be done that in one way or another have to do with handicapped accessibility, even though it's difficult to write it down and say, this is for this, and this is for this, and this is specifically.
Right. All right, so let me make the motion that we approve the first invoice of $16,687 to Davenport for the Conway Swimming Pool Committee as their Stage 2, first invoice in their Stage 2 accessibility improvements. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any other concerns, Jim?
No, sorry.
Okay. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for September the 9th. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Hi.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.